Hello, everybody. I'm going to read the beginning of a new piece. I've been writing a series of essays. I would call them Essays of Ecological Witness. This is the most personal one. And Christina had said that all of us have traditional ecological knowledge that's passed down from our families. And I really swear that I really was not given any from my family, coming from a family that's so thoroughly deracinated and from an urban background without grandparents, barely with parents, and living in a very urban environment with no access, very little access to nature. I knew maybe the word for leaf and tree, and that's that's about it. So this is a personal piece, sort of about my journey in trying to acquire ecological knowledge and the very deep need I had for a connection with nature. I do quote from some lines from the poet H.D., who was very important to me at a certain time in my life. So this essay is called Penelopes Resistance. In those days, I spent much of my time alone. I was one of 4 children and lived with my mother and siblings in a house that was often full of guests. Across the street was a parking lot. On the other corner was another parking lot that wrapped around the block, which was also what we saw from the back of the house. The lots must have been full of parked cars, but mostly I remember them as empty, asphalted places. I remember a hot dog vendor stationed at the entrance to the lot across the street, who was there every day, year after year. I had great empathy for him, who seemed to me the loneliest man in the world. It explains why I might have been drawn later, as I was, to Plato, for whom the world was geometry, for whom the world was only shadows. I was drawn to the Hermetic poets and the mystics. Does the first wild goose stop to explain to the others? No, he is off. They follow or not, that is their affair. In my 20s, when I was readying myself for flight, I read H.D.'s lines over and over, and I carried them in my pocket, copied by hand on a sheet of loose leaf, when I left the city, at last, for good. After I quit the city, during the time I carried H.D.'s poem in my pocket, I lived for a time in a sugar shack, a houseboat, a garage, a tent, a shepherd's hut, a granary, a chambre de bonne. I did not require of words their meanings in those days, only that they cast their spell. Still the walls do not fall, I do not know why. The longest stopover in my wild goose days, 4 years in a rented cottage I shared with 2 housemates beside Betawabak. Lake Champlain is its colonial name, at the end of a point of land in the shape of a wingtip. In summer, the woods between the house and the lake filtered the liquid light, and in winter we had a clear view of the water through the leafless trees, the season when every day I found a new enchantment. The stunted cedars and their gnarled roots sheathed in ice to resemble sea plants, the ever-changing geometries of ice flows, the poetry of absence I found in an abandoned boathouse, an upturned canoe half submerged in snow. The signatures of porcupine, deer, rabbit, and grouse who left their prints but never showed themselves to me. Though I didn't have a word for it yet, I'd come to identify that loneliness that I felt as a child in my top floor room looking out over a parking lot. I had found its antidote, and I drank as much of it as I could. My journals from that time on the lake are filled with ecstatic passages of the life I discovered. The past few days I have watched pageants of light. I recorded the heron still as a bottle of ink at the water's edge, the courtship of red-winged blackbirds in the cattails, the tree stumps pencil sharpened by beaver, the swooping call of the pileated woodpecker. The delicate columbines suspended in their inversions so improbably from crevices in the rock. Entire cedars, even more improbably, finding their root holes in the limestone bluffs, wildly twisted over the ages into calligraphic forms. I had come to know when to expect a rainbow, and one afternoon, standing in my kitchen, I wrote, I saw the rain slant through a patch of sunlight and went out to search the sky and found three, diving in perfect arcs one by one into the lilac hedge, the way years later I would watch a family of dolphins dive in their sequential arcs into the sea. I found meaning, I wrote, not in the kernel, but in what envelops it.
So Alexis, I'm like you. I was thinking, so what ecological heritage do I have from my ancestors? And I have a lot of heritage, but it's not necessarily ecological. So I'm going to read either 2 or 3 short poems, depending on time. And 2 of them are COVID related poems. That is, I wrote them while spending so much time, alone or with my husband at my house. Fraught season. I'm tired of saying, oh, the birds, listen to the birds, as once again they parcel out the sky. I want to feel how their songs are gifts, and the leggy pansies running to seed near the end of their season, and the 3 strawberries I've managed to grow, each partly rotten or eaten, the snapdragons and dianthus, mint, the orangey pink geranium, marigolds, lantanas, raindrops after storm dripping from the eaves, the squirrel that just bounded across the yard and ran up the crepe myrtle, the sloosh of cars driving past down the wet seat, and a memory so early I don't even know if it's true. Myself lying in a cot in a hotel, watching the blurred reflection of streetlights in the window as their lozenges of color changed, hearing that same wet sloosh, the mystery that surrounds us, the otherness of lives passing on the night street. As I lay cocooned in my parents' love, in the lights, the rain, and now here in this fraught season, the first mesh and delicate tracery of leaves on trees so huge, they nearly blot out the white sky. So I'm an Army brat, and this is an Army brat poem. It's called Ironing, and it has an epigraph from Georgi Voros. I have the whole of time and space to find again the face I seek. We're sending our father his Christmas box, 1st and 2nd grade pictures, a blue-gray flannel shirt, fleece-lined slippers, stinky cheese. It's cold in Korea, our mother tells us, and he misses food from home. We blow kisses in the box, wrap it with twine, seal each seam with melted wax, and off it goes to his APO. Next, it's time for ironing. We press handkerchiefs at our own small boards as she deftly noses her iron into the gathers of skirts, smooths out collars and lapels, lines up pleats, holds them firm, and slicks the steam in. And as we follow our father from Pennsylvania to Japan, from Japan to California, while we while away the work, we play Let's Describe or Movie Stars. Let's describe a ball ground. Let's describe a beach cabana. Can you name 3 movie actresses whose last names start with C? Now, as the wind rises and temperatures head downward once again, I smooth and press the lace-edged cutwork napkins she used when she hosted Army Wives. And I recall the chapel, my navy blue wool dress, my fear to touch his face. One chrysanthemum petal had fallen on his hand. Softly, our mother told the undertaker, "Let me fix his hair. He never wore it parted quite so high." And the third is kind of a blessing for all of you. A young stag at dusk, whitetail flicking, eating flowers heaped on a raw grave. He raises his head to watch us before he vanishes slowly into the trees. Outside the peace ride on arching stems like moons in a lead white sky. My, all year earth holds them. I ignore them. Night thickens among the branches of ginkgo, maple, willow oak, cherry, redbud, and the thicket of bamboo that surround this wooden house. Sometimes I am afraid. At 3, I knelt on the back seat of my mother's car and looking at the window said, "There's so much to see and so little time to see it." Or so I've been told. Is like that now, watching the leaves. Bread rises in the oven. May the stag sink back into the forest. May the petals drop on the grass. Whoever you are, may you be at peace in this great silence where only the birds speak. Thanks.
I've been working with a project called Writing the Land, which matches poets with farmers who have put their land in trusts, which means they put an easement on the land with stipulations. This land can only be such and so forevermore. It's a pretty radical thing to do in terms of farming, and it actually devalues your land, but it increases the ecological value. So I've been paired with Red Fern Farm, which is near me. It's near the Mississippi River. And they have put their farm into perennials, forever perennials. They forever, as long as we have this civilization, nobody can plant, broccoli, cabbage, any corn, beans, anything like that, because they have taken an old corn and bean farm, rundown farm, and transformed the whole thing into nut trees, bushes, fruit trees, shrubs, all edible things. So this has 3 sections. And I've got a podcast called Ag Arts from Horse and Buggy Land, which you can get anywhere you get your podcasts. And so I have an interview of the farmers on the podcast. And then next week I'll have this poem with a tour through their farm. And there's 3 parts to this. Red Fern Farm. Corn is not the answer. Then what is? Chestnuts planted into the rich soil at Red Fern Farm, just 2 miles from where the Mississippi River flows, where the paleo people lived 10,000 years ago, mammoth hunters whose points you've held in your hands. Then the archaic people struggled with droughts and dry prairie, giving way to the mound builders and the Oneotas, living in pine forests along rivers and streams, the last prehistoric culture, giving way to the Iowa, Meskwaki, Sac and Fox, Ho-Chunk, Blackhawk, and Sioux, all who broke very little ground, who kept no livestock, who kept the earth in a place where the sky was black with migrating pelicans, ducks, and geese diving down to fish in the wetlands, with the turtles, frogs, and snakes looking on. It's for the birds' sake, for the sake of all who've preserved this land, for the sake of the native people, the native prairie, the sake of all the settlers and sons and daughters of the homesteaders trying to claim a home, trying to make a buck on free land, land parceled out to anyone who could stick it out 5 years. For the sake of the sons and daughters of the sons and daughters who stayed for generations, pushed to expand, to do as they were told with tillage, chemicals, and yields, trying to get big before they had to get out. But you wouldn't be told. And the chestnuts began to grow. And so did the heart nuts, hazelnuts, honey, and aronia berries, Asian pears, carnelian cherries, and hardy kiwi vining up the sides of the trees. And so did the persimmons, sweet, mild, rich, and picked in the early fall. The days still warm, the fruit still hard on the branches, tasting like an apricot, maybe even better, smelling like sweetened dough with a dash of cinnamon. Too soft to slice, simply cut in half, the flesh scooped out for a smoothie, a compote, a dried treat, a pudding or upside down cake with the pulp mixed with flour, baking soda, nutmeg, cloves, chopped pecans, and lemon zest. What? No delicious apples, no Bartlett pears? No, nothing to be pruned. No vegetables, no broccoli, tomatoes, sweet corn? No, nothing to be dug up, turned over. Only asparagus or horseradish that comes up all on its own from year to year. And for the future, no annual crops, an easement in place, protecting the farm from the bulldozer, lapsing back into row crops, the speculator with a housing development or a theme park with flashing neon signs and rides and slides, shooting screaming teens into an artificial lake. Only perennials, drowning in trees, bushes, shrubs that will grow well in this changing climate zone. Who knows what the future will bring? 30 years from now, the persimmon may find the weather too tough. Now that's pretty extreme, the land trust had said. Yes, that's extreme, you said. We are extremists. The pawpaws too are extremist, extreme in their beauty, the maroon flowers drooping down, producing a massive amount of fruit on a single stem. The green bounty quietly camouflaged, understated, hidden beneath its leaves. The Quakers of the farm, like you, their owners, mild in manner, mild in taste, custardy like a banana crossed with mango. Unlike apples, peaches, and pears, the pawpaws never crossed the ocean. A native tree familiar to the Meskwaki, the Sac and Fox, the Ho-Chunk and Sioux. A lucky find, a food source for the settlers. But good for only 2 days. Pawpaws never hit the road, never shipped across the country. No one ever picked them and put them in their pocket for long. So the apples, peaches, and pears pushed them aside, and the pawpaws went way down yonder. Yet here on Red Fern Farm, next to the chestnuts and persimmons, the pawpaws bear witness, greet Bosnians who crossed the ocean, fleeing war, recreating their old world custom of picking chestnuts in the fall. The Bosnians pull into the U-Pick farm in their vans with buckets and baskets. Their vehicles fill with just a little of what they left behind. The nut wizard whirls across the ground beneath our feet in this ever-shifting place, tree roots sinking in, communicating through an intricate web of fungi, growing around and inside them, telling the dirt to stay put, stopping it from washing downriver, from carrying harm, finding no one, nothing displaced.
Wow.
So
Good
it's
luck.
a
Good luck.
it's now the U-Pick farm, and their main customers are the Bosnian refugees, and they come in van loads from all over the state to pick, and it's a pretty interesting scene down there. And you know, the whole idea of not planting perennials is you don't have to till, and you have plant, perennials hold this dirt in place. And so we've had this huge problem with erosion and everything, washing down the Mississippi River to the dead zone. And
I have to replant my asparagus every year. I don't know about you.
really? Oh no, what's
What am I doing wrong? Anyway,
I don't know. I think asparagus and horseradish should be, the only two vegetables with it's a little extreme. It is, but
I'll do three. This first one is called New York City Giggin'. The change of light, grayish under pale winter skies, bits of azure and mauve mix in this end of spectrum white. Illuminate only what moves, who skids and slides as we walk as if standing on eggshells on top of 2-week-old ice. Sudden darkness still astonishes, silken black of evening, blots out everything except luminosity of luxury condominiums, hurling their largeness upon common folk, grinding out the natural world. Everywhere one looks, metal rigs, nets hanging on every block. The whole city is under a scaffold. My gaudy queen doing a cameo in drag. Hiss and moan of hydraulic cranes, drills bite into concrete, change of light, grayish under pale winter skies, blots out everything except luminosity of luxury condominiums, men with hard hats, orange vests, and plaid flags. Overneath bones of the African dead, a new city is being born, built by immigrants, day laborers from Russia to Nairobi. Last silvers of daylight against the skyline, precious even now. The next poem is dedicated to the late Monica Hand, and it's called Blues Woman Elegy. You came from women who sat out on their porches, gazing at constellations of Pegasus and Orion, women comfortable in the heavens, made earthbound by children and wayward men. To see a new thing happening. Who is that heifer? One girl child painting, writing stories and poems, scared everyone by pointing to a different future. You were big bone, wide hip, smart as you want to be. Did the traditional job at the post office, nonprofits, wore big Ankara style pants and men's hats too. Blueswoman song lighting up a room like that time we read poems at the Venus Hottentot conference. To hear what you were really saying commended courage. Homemade, badass, Coptic stitch books bound with beads. Concentric circles of gold etched into every page, you're all touched. Your swerve growing from blue collar to academy to become a scholar in such a brief birth space. Lived too long in Missouri, too far away from the folk. Both gave and took your heart from you. We'll miss you walking ahead, brilliant, ablaze in the fields of life. African angel goddess. No ethereal illuminations for her. She was always earthbound, attracted to nightlife, music, places where folks were dancing so hard, bodies rained sweat. African angel, mother of humanity. Lucy definitely isn't her name. See her wearing silver, kicking ass alligator boots. Get right in my face, shouting, girl, get the hell up. She wears her halo glinting across her Delta Y forehead, the harp and horn thing she left in heaven, but she'll walk you through any adversity, knowing all pathways in and out of hell. She can visit wearing many disguises, rags so dense, only the gold of her face is visible. She speaks Mandarin, Bantu, and Twi, same sweet mother tongue to her. We'll meet you at the River Styx, bored with crossing over in that rickety-ass boat. Might even give you a second chance because it's rebirth and life that interests her. She's in the smoke where women gather, bearing arms, refusing to be raped, murdered, and made refugees from their homes. Women of war in Liberia, Rwanda, Sierra Leone, women in Abuja, Cape Town, Harlem, Arusha, new women everywhere gather to give birth to a future we can inhabit. African angel in the middle of our middle passage, etching freedom over us, kicking us forward. New woman, change forever.
All right, I'm gonna attempt a share screen. If I don't work, I have a plan B, okay? This is a painting by my friend Michael Kimball, who is a novelist, playwright, and painter. And you're looking at the comet Neowise off the coast of Maine by Nubble Lighthouse. And every June and early July, I rent a cottage right near that lighthouse, right by the ocean. And in June of 2000, the scientists discovered that there was a comet that they had not tracked because the last time it passed by the Earth was 7,000 years ago. So obviously they hadn't tracked it. And I've always felt some attraction to comets and the constellations. And at the time I was collaborating with a Swiss musician, I think I'd mentioned it earlier, creating lyrics that he would then set to music. And this particular comet struck me. I just seemed to enter it and looked at the Earth from the comet's perspective, thinking, you know, okay, the last time it spun around this planet, it was all this lush green place. And now it's like a wasteland, or certainly on the verge of one being. And so I wrote some lyrics from the comet's perspective, and it's called Neowise. And this is the cover of our album. It's going to be called Songs of the Crossing. We've collaborated for about 17 months, back and forth between Basel, Switzerland, and Cambridge. We did not verbally communicate for a whole year until the album was done. We didn't Skype or FaceTime. This was all done by letters, by emails. And then when we were done, we had a nice time and had a beer and had a Skype. So I'm going to try to play the song.
You blazed the path through the night sky when earth knew its darkest year. We dwelled in innocent garden the last time you appeared. What had we walked, did you wonder, to a precious paradise? We needed something to believe in. We needed you, Neowise. Just on a tempested ocean, adrift in a sea of stars, searching for the lighthouse, rest my soul, calm my fears. Chance in a million years, from a spark of life we formed. I wonder what you are thinking when you passed by this time around, like the man who wasted his talent and the maidens who burned out their lights, parables of possible futures. Oh, when will we get it right? Tossed on a tempested ocean, adrift in a sea of stars, searching for the lighthouse. Rest my soul, calm my fears. Will we lift our eyes in hope and bear witness to your sign? A light on the path of our future, to fashion a peaceful design, to bless the home we were given and restore the green and the blue. Oh, Neowise, we recognize our face in the flash of you.
This is a new poem. These are fairly new. One mother to another. I often walk where the slope of the hill hides the creek's living motion. Green weeds play with algae, bright beads in shifting currents. Water running clear to a pebbly bottom with its crisis of curves. Shallow swallows dart from a deep ravine, feeding on insect rhythms. I go there to dream, to cry, to pray. Today, from a fallen log midstream, a mother mallard watches her ducklings plunge headfirst to nibble leaves. Resting, alert, she watches their tails crimp air and water, and their heads are lost in the flow of grace as they grow beyond themselves. So, and then the other poem is, and this is a part of a collection, but it's experiments, and then I'll just make a bunch of them and then throw out some. So let me see where did the other poems go? Just a second here. Okay. I just have to dig it out from the file. Just give me a second. Oh, there it is. Okay, you may not catch this, but Callisto MT is a font, and it reminded me of Montana. So Callisto, Montana, only the locals know. You can only find this font if you're from Hellgate Canyon, Montana, and you know the roads past Pittsville and the Macquarie Spur to that cut across straight up the mountain, taking smaller dirt roads that unfold in loops along the native incline, sometimes ending with a landslide or avalanche. Natives knew these mountains long before settlers made the roads. Yeah, been there, you say. where mountain shadows cover you in lemon light before the cold dark licks your skin with the shock of death. Been in the heart of that font where mountains unfold their cloistered curves around your car as you drive along, innocent, dreamy, seeking a secret pass somewhere ahead to always summer drumming. Just before you get there, the sun falls brilliant orange and hurts your eyes. Yes, I've been in Callisto, Montana, listening to pines and cedars stir like the ocean in a shell, sitting on boulders with others who wonder how the hell they got there. The local saying, getting here is hard, getting out impossible. The old drunks say, if only their sheep didn't run off with dreams of getting married on more welcoming roads closer to the interstate. If only, why they'd, don't ask how I left. No one shears anything in this hamlet where houses grow to look like criminy mushrooms, and the only tavern, store, church, clinic, dance hall glistens at night like a chanterelle. I love Montana. So I used to live in Montana. I love Montana. So the last poem I will read is in this little book. I don't know, can you see it?
Mhm.
It's in Poetry of Horses, and it was published in England. And they asked for a poem, and I thought, wow, poems do keep living. So this is an older poem. And again, it's about Montana, around the area near Missoula, and the place is the canyon is really Hellgate Canyon again, which is really very cold to live in. So, horses in snow. They are a gift I have wanted again, wanted one moment in mountains where when winter got so cold, the oil froze before it could burn. I chopped ferns of hoarfrost from all the windows and peered up at pines, a wedding cake by a baker gone mad. Swirls by the thousand shimmered above me until a cloud lumbered over a ridge, bringing the heavier white of more flurries. I believed it would last, that when you went out to test the black ice or to dig out a Volkswagen filled with rich women, you'd return and we'd sputter like oil, match after match warm in the making. Wisconsin's flat farmland never approved. I hid in cornfields far into October, listening to music that whirled from my thumbprint. When sunset played havoc with bright leaves of alders, I never mentioned longing or fear. I crouched like a good refugee in brown creeks and forgot why autumn is harder than spring. But snug on the western slope of that mountain, I'd accept every terror, break open seals to release love's headwaters to unhurried sunlight. Weren't we big hearts? Through some trick of silver, we held one another, believing each motion the real one. Ah, lover, why were dark sources bundled up in our eyes? Each owned an agate marbled with anguish, a heart or its echo we hardly knew. Lips touching lips. Did that break my horizon as much as those horses broke my belief? You drove off and I walked the old road, scolding the doubles that wanted so much. The chestnut mare whinnied a cloud into scrub pine. In a windless corner of a corral, 4 horses fit like puzzle pieces, their dark eyes and lashes defined by the white. A colt kicked his hind, loped from the fence. The mares and a stallion galloped behind, lifting and leaping, finding each other in full accord with the earth and their bodies. No harm ever touched them once they cut loose, snorting at flurries, falling again. How little our chances for feeling ourselves. They vanished so quickly, one flick of a tail. Where do their mountains and moments begin? I stood a long time in sharpening wind. So, all right. Thank you. This is such an enjoyable evening, so different from my usual evening, which is really very boring. You know, so I don't have TV, so I just entertain myself.
Okay. Well,
Two poems, and I'm really happy to be here with you. And I can't tell you how I appreciate all my cohorts and their wonderful, brilliant, creative selves. On this poem, Where Are the Birds? Sonoran Desert Suite, for Larry Suspuch, who is the spiritual leader of the Northern Ute Nation. Excuse me, it just jumped. 3 weeks, I've looked everywhere for the lost birds, even in the park along the dry riverbed, just a few. 2 mockingbirds belting out new syncopated love whistles. 4 vermilion flycatchers diving like rubies on fire for insects in dry grass. Sear the grass, sear the trees, pinched prickly pears, dry rot barrel cactus, thirsty saguaros pleaded deep. Rain, they wait for rain, cry out to one another through crumbling roots, holding the last moisture in their cores. We've been dry before. After all, this is desert. But where are the birds? All winter, herds of finches, purple and house, and the sweet wheeze of goldfinches, white-crowned sparrows, Albert's towhees, cardinals with blood-colored wings, Gamble's quail noodling to seed blocks, flocks of mourning doves, and the mad laughter of Gila woodpeckers drumming into Palo Verde's green arms. A cacophony of song competing at the feeders, now full of untouched millet and thistle seed, rocked by thin, arid violins of wind. From the arroyo, the rasping frog notes of the one male phainopepla looking for a mate. No migrant warbler, no migrant tanager, no grosbeaks, no brewer's blackbirds, no errant swallows, not one migratory wing. At dusk, the constant moan of owls measures the distance between the Milky Way and the next frigid blizzard, a brillo of wind and sub-zero temps scouring from Seattle to Atlanta to upstate New York. Ours is a superstorm of drought, brittle daughter of climate change. 2. Last spring, tens of thousands of swallows and warblers dropped from New Mexico's skies, feathers perfectly preserved, as if they'd been laid out for taxidermists in high canyons, turned Arctic with sleet and snow, while DC congressmen denied responsibility for COVID-19, killing indigenous, Black, and Chicanx communities. This huge die-off of birds, all relegated to the back pages of online news, random Facebook posts, gone, 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 all gone. 3. Driving the southern desert for hours on Route 86 across the Tohono O'odham Nation, following the bulldozed gash the steel wall gouges. This week's count, 35 ravens fighting mid-air above Indian health services in cells. 10 red-tailed hawks hunkered on electric poles. 1 caracara topping a saguaro. 1 turkey vulture scouting roadkill near the Quijotoa cemetery. 1 chrysal thrasher dashing in front of my car. 4. Immigrant survivor of the 1918 pandemic and 2 world wars, my grandma Anna fed wrens in her garden, told me, honey girl, look for beauty. No destruction is ever final or complete. Last poem, Prayer in the Time of Pandemic for Naomi Shiabnai. Worry sifts through eucalyptus limbs Audubon warblers cling to on their way north. Immigrant warblers flash no passports, lift slight wings over any grounded fence. Eucalyptus doesn't argue about wearing a mask, protects itself by shedding bark, self-trims branches in storms. I envy the generosity of trees, the way they shade us, asking nothing in return. No tit for tat, no cost or tax. Relaxed, their leaves perfume air we breathe away from infected crowds. They have no use for TV or doomsday reports of ossified lungs for daily presidential lies, or bodies ferried on the sweating backs of fever dreams. No tree nor warbler, congressman nor refugee family caged along our border is immune. Afternoons, I choose to lie beneath this live canopy, catching fractals of light, branches hoisted skyward with their 1,000 green and open palms. Thank you.
Thanks. So let's see. I'm going to share my screen because I'd like you to see what I'm reading. For access reasons, it's easier to follow. Okay, so I'm sharing with you the work that you've known now for quite a few years. I'm still working on my Diver Beneath the Street collection, the one that you've heard various bits about me living on a street where there's a murder house. So this is the new epigraph of this collection. And the first piece that I'm reading was actually posted last weekend, and it referred to October 4th, i.e. Monday, this Monday, when we had this thread to my university. I'm going to the University of Michigan and blow away every single woman I see with an AR-15. There, violent pro-male revolution coming. This was posted by an anonymous poster on Sinlist, a Russian confession platform, on the 4th of October, 2021. String of murders on the east side. Another woman's body is found in a vacant house. She was wrapped up in a carpet. Her sister, targeted in their 50s, derelict houses. These are snippets from 2019. In 1967, during the time of peace, free love, hitchhiking, 19-year-old, walking home, apartment in Ypsilanti, partially buried, abandoned farm, 6 more female students. This is from Edward Keyes' Michigan Murders, a famous true crime novel, which did talk about a true crime. Another piece about the same 1976 to 79 material. Evidence came from a home owned in Ypsilanti. Before they left for vacation, wife gave his kids haircuts in the basement. The clippings swept, piles left. And then lastly, from National Geographic. With fewer ways to seek refuge from warming, ocean-dwelling species are disappearing, twice the rate. Oceans absorb heat trapped, carbon dioxide pollution, waters, warmest point, undersea denizens, no luxury of ducking, shady spot or burrow. Moon map in my Ypsilanti backyard in the afternoon storm. Mare oculus, collect the light that falls as prism, color code micro smells in the rain. Mare os, guide me down into dark caverns, wet moss beneath my feet. Mare nesus, to the weaving interior fields of stalks, reach leather green of pine needles, black twigs. Mare finditur, rift opens below the nose's saddle, too tiny for my fingertips. Mare mentum, a final hill, drip rivulets, slide side of my neck. Wet shoulders, cool, explode green fire, eye folds blur, liquid curtain waves, glass raindrops sing color transition, rhythms, cloud rain, tree rain, tattoos my backspace, moistens my spine.
Brilliant.
Fungi moves. Deciduous pincers close in over winter. Tulips push against earth knot, fangs break surface. Origami folds rise into March light. Narcissi spy with a yellow eye. Dark-rooted grip lifts a dogwood arc above the brick. Pink blossoms rain down dandruff in premature spring. Kitty corner, vampiristic yard tree chomps to join corseted sugar maples that hint of reddish stands. Mats of Kentucky bluegrass creep along southern border. Annex mycelium strands to weave a secret glucose code. Dense nutrient shuttle deep below grinds undeterred by orderly peony plugs that will shake and shake come April. And one last one. You've heard some of these before and some have been in About Place. It's just really fun to put them all together now. All right, I'll read this one, which was in About Place, but I don't think I've ever read that out to you all. Moby the sea dragon, Kangaroo Island of West Australia, is one of few habitats of the leafy sea dragon. Ghost nets, discarded fishing nets that drift in the open water, entangle and trap many marine organisms. Octopus meets leafy sea dragon off Kangaroo Island's coast, cast for drama school. Phycodorus equus gently lowers his head. Fun wave, a drift of seaweed camouflage. Octopus tips her hat again. Presents plump spawn from Purple Magician's chapeau. Trojan Daddy opens his belly button and they stream, gentle baby leaves, swell into salt, into the open, an O of snout, a suck, a tiny crustacean, gift-wrapped neon microfilament whooshes down each gullet. Unity. Octopus bobs, dark horse's tears mingle in the stream. 8 tentacles glide into ball gown bubble. A mass stallion procession gallops backward through Circus Maximus. Drag ripples guts, soars a salad. Other baby dragons watch, dream of danger. Thumbless creatures of the deep, strangling, tender. Tips, touch, kiss under drift. Japanese plastic bag. Suntan lotion, bottle cap. Death spiral into thong. Days later, shoe beaches on the sand, size 6 Leviathan, web of small corpses bound by fishing line, shoes pink foam. Octopus beaks chicken-like satay, aged seaweed mourns in unshot shallows. Tragedy radiates, the seagulls applaud, the nets drift close, hungry, ancient ghost. All right, thank you.
So I'm going to share screen. So this is from, it was published in Black Earth, in the About Place Journal. And I'd like to thank Amanda Reevy and Claudia Savage for choosing my piece. And I will just read from the description that goes along with it. In 2018, I was traveling along the Greenland ice sheet by dog sled with East Greenlandic hunters and a British guide. We came to the edge of the sea ice, and one of the hunters pointed to his village of Samiliga. He said he once looked forward to winter because he and his family could travel by dog sled between Samiliga and the neighboring villages of Kulusuk, Tinnik, and Tassilak, where his extended family lived. Traveling the sea ice by dog sled is quick and easy. It means community, family, friendship. Now it was more difficult to access neighboring villages in winter because for the past 10 years, the ice hasn't frozen over. Melting ice means social isolation. Sheets of paper have been a feature of my life since I was a child. My grandfather worked in a paper factory outside Portland, Oregon his whole life and supplied me with paper for drawing and writing stories. My mother taught me to create handmade paper as a child on the shores of the Pacific Ocean. From them, I learned about the relationship between text and texture. The process of hand paper making is meditative and slow, like traveling by dog sled. I love it for its physicality and its feminist origins. Paper is thought to have been invented in the Han Dynasty in China by laundry women who used lint from clothes and pulled the first sheets. I made these paper sheets of the Greenland ice sheet at Women's Studio Workshop in New York. I first carved foam inserts to fit my mold and decal in order to create fragments or bergy bits, a type of ice that forms when icebergs shatter and scatter in a fjord or in the open sea. As I worked, I was thinking about the bergy bits I saw in the fjord between Samiliga and Kulusuk and the hunter's story. According to the National Snow and Ice Data Center, the Greenland ice sheet extends about 1.7 million square kilometers or 656,000 square miles, covering most of the island, a span 3 times the size of Texas. The Greenland ice sheet is losing mass rapidly, but when I stood on it, it seemed massive and indestructible, even though I knew it wasn't. By creating bergy bits or fragmenting glaciers out of handmade mulberry paper, I was able to emphasize the ice sheet's fragility. My paper doesn't contain much bonding agent. If I soak it in water, it dissolves quickly. The other material at work here is encaustic, an ancient painting method using beeswax, resin, and in this case, handmade pigment. The wax calls attention to the dwindling bee population worldwide. This practice also contains the paradox of using melting wax to create sheets of paper that resemble melting ice sheets, not to mention the carbon footprint I made by traveling repeatedly from Greenland to Greenland from Idaho. It's tempting to upload gorgeous photos of the Greenland ice sheet and its glaciers. I have many of them on my computer, and one can find them everywhere online. But along with the reality of climate change, we live in a world dominated by pixels. Our wired engagement with ice sheets can actually estrange us from them by presenting them as abstract aesthetic experiences. My fragments created with handmade paper, pigment, and hot beeswax are meant to tell the story of the beauty and ephemerality of ice sheets in a way that evokes intimacy and care, even if they have to be displayed digitally. And then I am going to venture and read a poem. You guys, I feel like this is the safest place to do this. I have a PhD in British Romantic poetry, and I just am not a poet. I love poetry, I spent like 10 years of my life studying it. So
DJ, you already warned us about this. Go ahead and read the poem.
Okay. So it's called Apex, and I put a little epigraph from Robin Wall Kimmerer today, since she seemed to be the sort of patron saint of our meeting this weekend. So it's the quote from her book, "She fell like a maple seed. Maybe I know this leaf because I married a maple with broad trunk and a wicked hockey arm, or because the chevron tipped leaves and the 3 primary veins pushing up the center of each blade straight to the apex. The maple grows outside Wilmer Dorm, where late August students, masked and eager-browed, move armfuls of clothes, baskets, books, shoes, screens, where my daughter stayed many summers ago for piano camp, the first time I'd left her alone. Call if you need anything at all, I had said, but she was already past childhood, though I didn't know it then. Why? In spring, water travels from soil to leaves. This leave's margins curl, white fractures move across its red skin. My friend arrives, a botanist. So I hold up the leaf and ask, why is it doing this? Because, he says, it's at the end of its life. And that's all. Thank you.
Well, speaking for me, the evening has been one of inspiration, proper anger, identification of alternatives, experiences in different environments, but at the end, it's made me happy. So I want to thank everybody for that. Anybody else want to say anything for the night? They're welcome to. I don't want to have the last word.
I just will look forward to seeing everybody in the spring. Thanks, everybody. It's great to see you.
It was wonderful. I enjoyed it very much. Thank you all.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
everybody for reading. It's so inspiring and just fabulous. Thank you all.
Mhm.
Thank you all.
Well, it's
Thank
great
you.
to have it's great to have an audience member, Mary Jo. So thank you.
It's good to know you have a
Yeah,
role.
we actually had audience.
A safe audience.
It was
Take care, everybody.
Spring.
Love you all.
Bye.
All right.
Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Michael.